political debate that will be later on. Tagad ķersimies klāt ļoti karstam
Now we will deal with the hot potato. Juris Greenwalds representing Sia Sakret, one of the largest building material producers. And Juris himself is quite actively involved in the new campaign, Let Us Live in Warmer Houses. So probably we should look at the heat insulation, because a large portion of our people live in the block residential houses and that are quite poorly insulated. So let us see what is the situation. How many of us actually live in the so-called Soviet-era block houses? So please raise your hands. So I can see that not so many actually, because nationwide some 70% out of the residents live in such Soviet-era block houses. And we only have one man who lives in a heat-insulated house. And one lady, if I'm not mistaken. So, to continue, how many of those who live in the block houses have heard about a campaign which is aimed at refunding up to 60% of the money that you invest in heat insulation? Probably I have heard about it, but still I haven't done anything about it. So, everyone has heard about it, but no one has done anything. So, please motivate us somehow, so that we can go on with all the heat insulation schemes. So, going back from the human being and our brain activities and our spiritual development, probably we should also talk about our surroundings, in this case our homes. I will try not to go into details about the technologies, but I would like to, I will focus on actually describing the areas of our expertise, the areas of development, because sometimes people are quite have quite misleading ideas about this heat insulation or renovation of residential buildings. So why should we actually insulate our homes? Here we have some approximate statistics prepared by my German colleagues. Here on the left we can see that we spent our energy, at least in Europe, in average. Here you can see the distribution, and here we can see that 44.5% are used on domestic trade and crafts and services, and it's almost one half. And if you look at the second circle or pie chart, you can see that 82% are spent on heating. And this situation is quite absurd, because sometimes we say, but we are forced to do so because we don't have enough money. But the question is, why don't you insulate your home? Because if we look at our cash flow, we could that we spend on energy is actually thrown out simply to keep up certain temperatures at our premises. So what we are trying to say in these seminars, when we talk with the residents of those block houses, so what you do with your money actually can be compared with a situation where once a year all of you gather in the yard, take out your wallets, take out your money and burn it while dancing and singing around. And being very happy about burning your money. And if someone asks why you do so, you say, oh, you know, we simply don't have enough money. So this is what we actually do now with our residential buildings that have been built in Soviet era, especially the block houses, because at that time people were reluctant to think about the heating and the costs and the efficiency, because the energy was quite cheap at that time, and we simply tried to to provide high level of heating, and so that if it's too hot we simply open the window. So this is probably something that we can benefit from also financially, because it would be very hard to convince someone who makes the ends meet by great efforts, and they still have to take care of their children. They also want to go to a movie at least once a month, and it is hard to convince them that he or she should dedicate some 30% of their monthly income simply to live in a greener manner. Of course, it's very difficult, and of course, only some of us, those who are highly responsible and very green ideas oriented, can be convinced in such a manner. But generally speaking, of course, it's very difficult. So if we talk about heat installation, this is the case where by insulating our homes we can actually cut our costs, especially now that we have a national program which says that 60% of your investment will be refunded. So if we look at it rather than not an investment, but if we look at it as a refurbishment of our homes, and if someone says, "Oh, I like what you did with your apartment, here is 60% of your costs back," of course we would like to have such a situation. However, on the other hand, if we look at our homes, if we build a private house, of course, it will not generate returns with years, because it's not a production facility. In other words, we have simply spent our money and that's it. Therefore, of course, within the scope of this program, we receive some skepticism, and of course, we should provide some mathematical proof. And of course, we can convince the homeowners that this renovation, if done properly, can generate savings. So if we talk about insulation, we are not talking about simply cosmetic renovation. And of course, people not always are quite well aware about the difference between what's the general repainting or redecorating and actual heat insulation. It's not as simple.
In this case, a house or a residential building is a single body, single system, and as such it should be perceived or viewed. For each building or for each house, the heat losses will be different, but more or less we have the average heat losses as described on this slide. So these are the sources for heat losses. A lot of heat is lost, 70% is lost through walls, 17 plus 30, which is the ventilation and insufficient insulation of windows, so it's quite a lot of heat loss. And this approach, by approaching one of the elements, is the reason why we have so many complaints about the failure of the energy efficiency measures. Just recently, this year and last year, there was a wave of projects implemented by municipalities. Municipalities funded the replacement of the insulation at kindergartens and schools. And what we have heard is the following. The insulation has been changed, everything looks nice, everything has been done correctly, but thanks to the old, outdated ventilation systems, there are no energy savings, or there are even heat losses. So the windows have been replaced, the ventilation system is out of order, so it's too hot in classrooms and the windows have to be kept open. And that's what we are doing right now. The windows in the back of the room are open. If you are sitting in one of the last rows, it's very hot there, but nobody of us thinks that we should turn down the heat because it costs something. and we should close the window and have the lights on and have the appropriate temperature set for the room in order to have nice climate. So we should probably even open the